Hello, friends. It's Phil, and in today's podcast, we're going to talk a little bit about simple. Yes, my friends, simple. Simple stuff. So, just for reference, I think I've attempted this podcast today about 10 times. So, hopefully, this time, attempt 11, I'm going to nail it. Most of the podcasts, for reference, are nearly always done as a one-off exercise, one-time record. But for some reason today's podcast is giving me a challenge because it's not very easy to be simple about something that seems complicated. So in this podcast, the title of it is Your Garden is Simple. But it's not simple, is it? It's really complicated. There's many, 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 many growing parts. And you have absolutely no control of those growing parts. We have absolutely no control of those growing parts because a garden just grows. So I guess the thing that's been confusing me is like, how do you talk about your garden is simple when it's complicated, but when it's actually really simple? Because the thing is, your garden gets on without you. So I guess what I've been trying to unpackage in this podcast is we, let's say, the human race have a desire to have things, to put things in order. But the thing about a garden, and I've said this to before in previous podcasts, is that we are only a custodian of the garden. In effect, the garden gets on with itself even if we don't turn up. It just gets on with being a garden. And it's only our control systems that make the garden complicated. So I've written a few lines that are in the description for this blog, podcast, YouTube, whichever channel you're going to be listening to this on. Read some of the words that I've put together. One of the lines that I really, really like, and I guess that's why this podcast has been a battle, really, is your garden is simple. It just needs time, but it doesn't need you, and you don't need to turn up. But when you do turn up, you can do the best you can do because your garden is simple. And the last words say, it will wait for you. And if there's any truth in, are there many things in life that we can make complicated? This say we can make the garden and landscapes complicated. But the complication comes from our desire to control something that gets on with it without us anyway. There aren't many things that do that. I mean, it's a bit like, or an analogy would be, um, a bike's only a bike when you're riding a bike, because when a bike isn't being ridden, it's just a load of steel and rubber, right? It just sits there inanimate. It's an object. And without your contribution, it remains just an object. Similarly, I'm using a MacBook to talk to you through, and a microphone, obviously. And without opening up the MacBook in the morning, it is just simply plastic and metal and silicon. chips. That's all it is. But look, your garden doesn't need you to turn up to get on with it, which in itself makes it very, very simple, because you can either choose to participate in it or you can choose not to. But you can always be reminded of the fact that even if you don't turn up, it will get on with being what it is, a garden. And I think there's something really special in that. And weirdly enough, when I started this podcast, I didn't have the thought that this is what I was going to discuss. But what makes your garden simple is the fact that it doesn't need you. But if you do turn up, then it's to your benefit to some extent. The garden will, the garden doesn't necessarily speak back and say, hey, thanks for cutting the grass. Only you will feel the sense of achievement from doing it or getting things in order the way you want them in order. Anyway, so I guess that is today's podcast done, isn't it? What I'd like you to do, actually, if you've got to this point, read the verse, the blog, the podcast, the description. Just have a little read, see what you think, and if you're on a channel where you can comment, then give me your thoughts. But look, in summary, your garden is simple because it doesn't need you. But when you turn up, you reward yourself with a reward. Fascinating. Look, are there many things that allow you to do that? Probably exercise is another one of those, and eating well is another one of them. And yeah, maybe some other stuff. But look, that's all for now. Sorry the podcast went on for a little bit longer than anticipated, but thanks for listening. And if you were one of the 200 listeners yesterday, hello across the world. We are now being listened to, friends, in 17 countries. How's about that? Anyway, thanks for listening, and catch you again very soon. Take care. Ta-da. Bye.